So we've been getting cozy all season long. We've snuggled in, we've been enjoying warm tea, we've wrapped ourselves up in blankets that you see scattered around. And yet, despite our very best efforts to be cozy, the outside world has a tendency to creep in. All is not cozy and love-filled out there, and sometimes we think that we are the only ones who live in times such as these. Uncertain, frustrating, scary, corrupt, morally questionable times like these. But alas, we are actually not that special. Our Bible stories are written in times like these as well. Isaiah wrote of a time of uncertain political leadership, writing of a vision when things would finally be different, when justice would reign. And Matthew and Luke tell the stories of Jesus' birth taking place in the midst of Emperor Augustus and Quirinius' leadership, where everyone had to report and be registered. And shortly after, when we talked about the Magi, the time of King Herod, who was set about to hurt all the young boys of the time, forcing Mary and Joseph to flee to Egypt to seek shelter and safety. Change some details, and these headlines could be our stories today. Change some details, and they could be headlines in 1818 in Austria on the heels of the Napoleonic Wars. Change some details, and these could be the headlines of 1918 in the midst of World War I. We are not the only ones living in times like these, but in the quiet hush of a still night, we are all cozied up here in church to welcome the birth of the baby. We sing familiar words: silent night, holy night. All is calm, all is bright. And we sing of heavenly peace. Take a look.
High in the Austrian Alps, in the cold and snowy village of Mariafar, a young priest named Joseph Mohr had been assigned to the parish. But he walked the streets with a heavy heart. Napoleon's war had wreaked havoc across Europe. Mohr had witnessed firsthand the depression of the economy and the suffering of the village where he had once resided. There was no doubt the young priest sought after God's stillness and peace. And it was here, lost in the majestic view of the Tauern Mountains, where he penned the lyrics that reached for hope from the holy night that changed the world forever. As tradition tells it, 2 years later, Mohr was preparing for midnight mass when he discovered their faithful organ had played its last note. Desperate to find a song for his parishioners to sing on Christmas Eve, Mohr grabbed the lyrics he had written 2 years before, left his church, and journeyed to the home of his friend, organist Franz Gruber. He showed Franz the words and asked him to compose a simple melody that could be accompanied by only a guitar. And so, on December 24th, 1818, Mohr's poetic expression of the birth of Jesus was sung by a humble congregation on a snowy, cold Christmas Eve, filling them with the hope of heavenly peace. Over the next century, silent night would spread across the world, and then, in 1914, those same lyrics, birthed in the aftermath of war, found their way back to the battlefield. On Christmas Eve, both English and German troops laid down their weapons and sang together about God's peace from deep in the trenches of the First World War. To this day, God pours out his gift of heavenly peace to all who will receive it. From high mountains to low battlefields, church choirs to families round the tree, we celebrate the very moment God transformed humanity by sending the greatest gift of all on that first silent and holy night.
That babe lying in a manger that we sing about every year, he grows up and shakes up the world with his teachings. He grows up and changes the course of history by teaching us to love our enemies, to share a meal with the most scorned members of society, to share our wealth with those in need, to stand up for the least, and to bring peace. The babe in the manger grows to share a radical message in his day, in the days of Herods and Pontius Pilates. It's a message that is radical in the midst of war in Europe. It's a message that's radical today, when so much in our society has changed from Jesus' day, and still it is a radical message. And so on this day when we celebrate Jesus' birth, it's not just about singing familiar carols, though we love to do that. It's not just about snuggling up and enjoying the twinkling of lights, though we enjoy that. It's about celebrating the birth of the one who changes our lives every day, if we let him. It's about celebrating the birth of the one who challenges us to do better every day, if we let him. It's about celebrating the birth of the one who brings us closer to God, if we let him. It's about celebrating the birth of the one who ushers in peace, if we let him. So on this silent night, this holy night, may we let Jesus in, so that redeeming grace and heavenly peace might take hold in our hearts, in our lives, and in our world. Thanks be to God. Amen.